If you could figure out someone's intentions and why they were doing it, and then surprise or challenge the fuck out of them with like what actually happened, then that's what Arcane was trying to do.
Well, let's talk about our mutual friends, Vi, Jinx, and the whole Arcane group. The season starts with Jace trying to save Victor, and by the end of the season, it's like, oh, we need to stop this, like, we need to stop Victor from bringing this, like, future to past. How is it kind of like tracking the trajectory of Victor's role in the story and Jace's response to it?
What's fun about season one is just, a lot of season one is about, like, creating the dream, creating the technology that's like, oh, it can change the world, right? And I think, I feel like probably a lot of people who were involved in creating very powerful and influential things in today's world and technology, whoever pioneered social media, I can only assume was like, fuck yeah, that's so cool. This is going to make the world better. And probably has a lot of thoughts these days about, well, maybe there's some problems with it because of like what we as humans do with it, right? I think there is a bit of that. Is amazing. Hextech is created. This will only be used to improve the world, right? ... And I think when it kind of gets abused and it gets turned into weaponry and they kind of lose control, I think that's when Jace and Victor react very differently. And I think they're also a little bit shocked about, like, you know, the other's reaction to that. And so I think we always knew that there would be a different conclusion when they're confronted with this reality that humans will use this technology for their own motives and for their selfish, you know, goals in life. And yeah, that's what really gives rise to this conflict between them.
I also love, like, sort of unintended consequence of that, which is that once something Silco says in season one, he says, like, the topsiders are leaving us further and further behind. And that's, like, what they didn't see is that by giving it to only one side and not the other, there's now this widening gap, which I think is very resonant in our world today, of this widening wealth gap and the things that we're experiencing. It's like, even if you have only the best intentions, like, this is what the gap is now wider. The difference is that it's harder to bridge. That was also like the fabric of season two, was the things you can't see, you know, that you can't control. And so I think that's why Victor, when he goes down to the undercity, is like, I'm going to do my part to make that a utopia. His little utopia compound is like, well, I'll just make, you know, what Topsides has down here. I'll try and compress that gap. And it's beautiful and wonderful, and, you know, even that goes awry for him. So always, like, intending, I think they always intended the right things. They always had great intentions and could not see how that consequences of those actions. Even when Victor can see the consequence of every action, he still can't see, you know,
the human element
the
of
human,
it,
the echo, or the things that you know are basically unknowable.
One of my favorite episodes in the entire season is when Echo goes to the parallel universe. From a narrative standpoint, he goes there in the grand scheme to get the time reversal device. But really, like, he gets to see this vision of this world that's familiar, but utopian, you know, the powder of this world, everything, the reconciliations he never had. What did you want to do with that story in the grand scheme of the story at that moment? And how did you want to also communicate that visually?
Well, yeah. First of all, I think Echo, just in that moment, he was a character who was always so hopeful, and he always believed in Zaun. And so in his own world, he lost that faith. He lost that vision. He had a vision of Zaun that was similar to that, and lost his faith in it. And so he needed to see that it was possible in order to fight for that again. Also to believe in Jinx again, who, you know, powder again. And so that was just narratively where we were at. And then, you know, you guys got to take the visuals of that alternate reality and kind of run with it.
Yeah, I think we wanted to make a pause with that episode, you know, since everything was so fast and dramatic and important, you know, we wanted to eat a bit, you know, where we could breathe a little bit, yeah. And that bubble episode was very important for us. Also, it's a way to explore a new genre. You know, I'm not talking about the Jace part, but for Echo and Powder, we had an opportunity to explore something a little bit more romantic, more fun as well in some certain aspects. So, yeah, I think as a team, you know, we really enjoyed working on that episode, and I think at the end with the results, you could tell, you know, you can tell that we had fun.
You know, I think one of the most definitive scenes is, you know, Vi and Jinx get into a scuffle and they accidentally hit Isha. And if there's one thing that like really represents their relationship and how it affects the world around them, it really feels like that, just that little slice right there kind of like symbolizes it. How was it kind of navigating the sister relationship this season, especially when you've got like Vi on the way down, where Jinx is becoming this like revolutionary freedom fighter figure?
First of all, anyone who has siblings knows how these things tend to go. Is like there will be those moments. It was really fun to think about that flip, right? Like Vi needs to kind of convince herself, okay, my sister is the monster, and now I need to fight the monster. But then suddenly there's this perspective of, am I the monster? When like Zaun kind of turns on her, if you will, and she wears the uniform. That of course there is a very loaded history, you know, regarding losing her own family to it. So for Jinx to even ask herself this question, like, am I a hero? Question mark. You know, she sees like how Isha adores her and looks up to her, and all of Zaun kind of needs her, and so I think just like it's a really, really complex moment, right? Actually, like when Jinx can just really say like, maybe you're the baddie. And so, yeah, I think those perspectives, I think so much of the show is about like seeing the other side, or like seeing the world through the lens of the other side. And I think that's like the quintessential moment for them when they kind of have to question a little bit how they see their sibling, at which point they have a very, very loaded perspective on each other. And so that just gets challenged. So yeah, it's a very, very, as much as we kind of like give it a fun wrapper, it's a very quintessential and very pivotal scene.
And then that leads to the reunion, you know, with Warwick. I mean, as much as I love this episode 7, I think my second favorite would be this episode 5, the siblings, but also all this drama that leads to the final reunion. That's and the music, you know, the way the music is structured around that build-up, you know, everything was so. I mean, I love that sequence. I love that episode.
Yeah, I think every time I watch the animatic, I like cried in that scene, that reunion scene every time.
And what I love about that is it also works so well as like a subversion, because everything with Vander before is like, it's horror. It's the closest you guys have gotten that outright horror where he's just going and annihilating anyone in the prison or whatever. And like, I love the scene where like Vi stops him from like killing Isha, like just like she can only see the claws. You know, how was it, like, in only the way Arcane can, how was it building to this family reunion?
Some of it was just embracing, like you said, I mean, Warwick has, like, there's a horror fantasy to it, and then you just kind of say, all right, let's go there. I think that's a lot of what makes Arcane, is that we do go to the extremes. In the music, in the visual depiction, in the VFX, and the blood. Yeah.
I think what was also important for us when we were conceptualizing it was just we always knew what that relationship between Vander and Silco was, and that history was, and like how they had worked in the mines and created the black market, but that was never in the show before. So we were like, oh, if this whole show is about whether or not these daughters will repeat the sins of their fathers, then let's get into what the father's journey was a little bit. And we got to see that through Warwick's like twisted mind. He went back to this familiar place from his past and didn't know why, and it was now twisted for him. And that room, that mining room that they get to be in is just, it's the first time that either of them got to see their father figures as brothers, really. And so it just like reframed everything for that family dynamics, you know, for them.
A lot of the season is about the nature of consequence. Anything that happens usually has really explosive, multicolored consequences. And how did you want to kind of explore the theme of consequence and escalation in season 2?
The characters become more like the world that they influence around them scales up and up and up and up, right? And so I think that's what's also so heavy on them. When Caitlyn stands up for Vi in season 1, all she really influences here is like 2 people, you know? When she is like more or less on the council, when she's then also kind of responsible for like the protection of Piltover, if you will, and like the justice, you know. But what has happened? Yeah, her decision-making changes, right? And I think there's a lot of those cases where people kind of lose themselves in the responsibility and the role they have to play now, and kind of like probably also shocking themselves a little bit. Yeah, it's no longer just you. So I think that's definitely something, even as people, you know, ourselves, you know, as leaders, when you have to make consequential decisions, you know. I mean, I remember when, you know, we were in the early days of Arcane, it was like everyone's kind of like going, but something, you know, like whatever, like the hair wasn't looking good yet. And like, am I the person who now makes the call to pause the whole thing because I subjectively think it's not good enough yet? Do I trust myself here? Am I okay with the consequences? Am I wasting a bunch of money? Am I wasting a bunch of people's time? It just changes everything, because suddenly, yeah, you wanted to say you go with your gut, but like now you're thinking about other people. So I think it's scary, it is daunting, but that is part of being, you know, in charge. And there's a discomfort that comes with it.
I think also like having the intentions, like you had to align with people's intentions and what they thought they were doing, and then surprise them with what the actual consequences were of those intentions. Like you can never really predict the outcome of, like you can have, again, the best intentions in the world, and then you have the outcome is just more than you can possibly imagine horrendous. And I think that's what we always tried to do. Like if you could figure out someone's intentions and why they were doing it, and then surprise or challenge the fuck out of them with like what actually happened, then that's what Arcane was trying to do.
There are no happy endings.